everything looked normal that night, it wasn't. The dog knew before anyone else did. Bo was not supposed to be in the nursery. The rule had been established from the first day Emmeline came home. The nursery was a dog-free zone, a clear boundary that kept the space calm and predictable. Bo was a 5-year-old mixed-breed shepherd, 64 pounds, the kind of dog who follows rules the way well-trained animals do, not because he lacks the will to break them, but because he has generally agreed they make sense. On the second Tuesday of January at 11:40 at night, he stopped agreeing. Taryn woke to hear him in the nursery, not barking. Standing at the crib rail with his nose through the slats, she got up, said his name firmly, and he turned and looked at her and did not move. She took him by the collar and walked him back to the hallway. He went without resistance but stopped just outside the nursery door and sat down facing it. She checked Emmeline, 8 months old, sleeping on her back, pink fleece sleep sack, soft rise and fall of her chest. The temperature was fine. The monitor was quiet. Everything measured normal by the instruments she trusted. She went back to bed. At 2:15, Bo was at the crib rail again. Same position, nose through the slats, his eyes on Emmeline's face. Not anxious, not growling, just there in a way that had settled into something fixed and intentional. Taryn moved him again. He went to the nursery doorway and sat. She called her mother the next morning and described it. Her mother said the dog is being protective. That's all. Her sister said some dogs don't understand boundaries with babies. Her husband, Colton, came home from a work trip that evening and watched Bo station himself at the nursery doorway during bedtime and said, "That's new." The second night, Bo went back to the crib rail at midnight without hesitation. Taryn watched him from the doorway for 2 minutes before she moved him. He was doing the same thing he had done the night before, nose to the rail near Emmeline's head, inhaling slowly in a way that was too deliberate to be casual, too consistent to be random. She checked Emmeline again. Asleep, breathing, monitor quiet, color fine. She moved Bo to the kitchen, closed the gate, went back to bed, and lay there with her eyes open, listening to the house, which told her nothing. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. At 3:50, Emmeline woke crying in a way that was not her usual feeding cry, a thinner, higher quality of sound. Taryn was in the nursery in seconds. She picked her up. Emmeline's skin was hot. Not warm baby hot. The kind of hot that had a number behind it that you did not want to see. The thermometer read 104.2. The urgent care clinic at 4:30 in the morning. Dr. Marcus Webb, pediatrics, ran the examination and ordered labs. The results came back in 40 minutes. Emmeline had a UTI, a urinary tract infection that had progressed faster than the typical presentation in infants, which often shows no clear symptoms until it reaches a fever level that indicates the infection has potentially spread beyond the urinary tract. At 104.2, the concern was sepsis. She was started on IV antibiotics. Dr. Webb explained it carefully, the way experienced pediatricians explain things at 5 in the morning to frightened parents. Urinary tract infections in female infants are often completely silent until they spike. No discomfort visible. No behavioral change. No external sign. The fever is typically the first indication, and by the time the fever has reached this level, the infection is advanced. But dogs, he added somewhat carefully, as if he was about to say something he would not have said 5 years earlier. Dogs have been documented to detect UTI-related compounds through scent before clinical symptoms appear. He had heard this kind of story before. Bo had been at the crib rail for 48 hours before the fever appeared. He had been standing there in the dark while everything looked normal and telling them, in the only language he had, that everything was not. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Emmeline responded well to treatment and came home 2 days later. Taryn carried her through the front door and Bo was there, tail low, head slightly forward, nose extended. He inhaled once near Emmeline's face, then he stepped back. He never went to the crib rail again after that night. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Taryn dissolved the nursery boundary after that. Bo now sleeps near the door of his own choosing. She did not ask him to do this. He simply took the post and kept it. The next story involves a yellow Labrador who lay still beside a sleeping newborn for 7 straight hours, and the chemical the hospital found in her bloodstream.